Welcome. The purpose of this video is to explain how to complete problems like this one you have in front of you, 14.1, which is a MRP diagram. This particular diagram has been created specially to teach with. It isn't generally the way we might see an MRP problem in the real world, but we'll work one of those. So let's begin with problem 14.1. Notice problem 14.1 begins by telling us that we have three items here, one end item that requires components listed on them, because with the MRP program we only use this when we have an item that has what's called dependent demand. In other words, we don't really need B and C unless we're selling an A. So the forecast is actually computed for A, and then we just get the related parts so that we can fulfill the order of the A's. So what this tells us here in this diagram is that for item A we have a 1 week lead time. It's a lot for lot sales. We have 35 on hand and we have 10 scheduled to come in week 4. We know here that the gross requirements for A are noted as 35, 30, 40, 50, and 150. Now this is what I was saying is determined by, say, the forecasting model. So our job here is to figure out how many units of B and how many units of C are we going to need in order to meet this demand right here. So let's just note that this is the demand. So I've noted in green there that the demand is annotated there. Now the next thing we might want to do is just bring down this information up here. Notice we've got a fair amount of information located up here. We want to nestle that in to our MRP diagram below. So we're going to just transfer it down. No particular order, maybe working from left to right, and you don't necessarily have to do it at the beginning. I like to do it at the beginning because I tend to forget, but you don't necessarily have to do it like this. But nonetheless, we've got B here, and I'm going to change my pen here so I can write a little easier. So B, we'll note here with 2, we've got a lead time of B for 1 week. Our lot size is 50, and we've got 10 on hand. I already noted that. And I just pulled this information from right here. Then the last thing is the scheduled receipts. We've got a scheduled receipt for 50 in week 1 and 100 in week 4. And I already put that in for you, so you don't need to worry about it. Then we're going to go down here to C, where I already have that written in, but we've got a 1 week lead time. We have a lot sizing rule of 100. And we have 100 on hand, so that's already noted. And then we've got the scheduled receipt of 200 here in week 2. So with that, we can kind of get going, starting the problem. So we start up here with our gross requirement, and we want to know if in each one of these columns here, if we're going to have a net requirement. So determining if there's a net requirement is always going to be step 1. So I'm just going to write in here a little tiny 1 so you can kind of keep that straight. So the way we determine the net requirement is we take gross requirement and we subtract projected on hand. It's going to equal net requirement. So in this case, we've got 35 at the beginning of the period because we had that projected on hand. We need 35, so we end up with 0 left over, which means we have 0 net requirements. So we have nothing to order or anything else. So we just leave it like that and move on. We don't really need to note anything else. We just move on over to the next period. We can carry our 0 over. So at the beginning of period 2, we've got 0 on hand, but we have this gross requirement meaning something similar to a demand. We can just write that in here, of 30. So now remember step 1 is the net requirements, and so we do have a net requirement for 30. Step 2 then is to order to fulfill our net requirement. So we go back the lead time amount, which is 1 week back here, and we order our 30. So this would be then step 2, where we order it, and then it comes in the following week because we have a 1 week lead time, so we have it come in here, and then we bounce this number. This would be step 3. We bounce this number off of whatever is going to be required, or net requirements here, and we notice we're going to have 0 left over. So now we move on to the next period. We carry our 0 over like this. We determine if we have a net requirement. Well, we do, because we have gross requirements less projected on hand, which is going to be all 40 because we have nothing on hand. We place our order back here 1 week earlier, and our order comes in here just as scheduled. Now, what I'd like you to do, now we're going to have 0 left over. We're going to carry that over, but now instead of just placing the 0 there, we're going to bring the 10 down because, see, we have this scheduled receipt. So we have a scheduled receipt then of 10. So now our net requirement is not going to be for all 50. It'll be for 50 less what we have on hand, which is 10. So we have a net requirement then for 40. We order it 2 periods before and go on this way. And then we have 0 left over, which we carry into here. We have 0, and so we're going to have a net requirement for all 150. We'll order them here, and they'll come in here, and we'll have 0 left over. Now the next step is to take our planned order release for our parent and create our gross requirement for our child, because the planned order release for the parent always drives the gross requirement for the child. And this is a really important phrase in MRP, so I'm going to write it here for you. You really have to remember this. So the planned order release of the parent will drive the gross requirement for the child. Very important concept. Now we're going to take the planned order releases of the parent and we're going to drop them into here. So we'll have 30, and then we'll have 40, and we'll have 40, and we'll have 150. And those are just coming from right above. But we also need to drop those down here because, remember, A had 2 children, both B and C. So we'll drop them right into here. 30, 40, 40, 150. And we can go ahead then and calculate our gross requirements. We just take 30 multiplied by 2, so we get 60. 40 times 2 is 80, and 40 times 2 is 80, and 300. And here we've got 60, excuse me, actually, no. We need to multiply this 30 by 3 because there's 3 C's for every 1 A. So here this will be 90, 120, 120, 450. Now we just go through this just like we did the other one. So we start up here. We have a gross requirement for 60. And we actually have 60 on hand because we have 50 plus 10, which is 60, leaving us 0 left over at the end of the period, which we carry over to the second period. Now here we are not planning to get any in, so our net requirement then is going to be of all 80. So we drop back and order our 80 here, and we bring it in here. However, we can't actually order 80. We would like to, but we cannot because we have this lot sizing rule we have to deal with right here. So we still have a net requirement for 80, but now we have to order 100. And we order the 100 because we have to order in lots of 50. So we could order 50, we could order 100, we could order 150, but we cannot order 80. So of the 100 that we receive in, we need 80, which leaves us then with 20 left over. So we carry that over to the next period. So now we have a net requirement not for all 80, but for 80 minus 20, which is 60. Just want to put it here so you can see where I got it. So we have a net requirement then for 60. Now, of course, we'd like to order 60, but we can't because we've got this lot sizing rule. So we order 100, leaving us 40 left over. Because of the 100 we received in, we need 60. That leaves us 40 left over. Now, we receive in another 100, so that gives us a total of 140. And we have 140 on hand, and we need 300. So that leaves us a net requirement of 160. We'd like to order 160, but we can't. We're forced to order 200. 200 come in, and that leaves us again with 40 left over that we carry into the next period. Now, we do the same thing again. Same exact idea, except for now we have to start over again up here because we've got 90 that we need in period 1. We have 100 on hand, leaving us with 10 left over that we can carry into this period, add to our 200, so we end up then with 210. And of the 210 that we have on hand, we only need 120, so that leaves us 90 left over, but again, no net requirement here. You can put a 0, you can leave a blank, whatever you want to do. So we carry our 90 over here, and now we have 90, but we need 120. Now we have these lot sizing rule in this problem for 100. So we'd like to order just 120 minus 90, or 30, but we can't. We have to order all 100. But our net requirement is actually just for 30, but we've got to order 100. So we've got a 1 week lead time. We have a lot extra here. So we end up with 70 left over that we carry to the next period. So now here we need 450 minus 70, which is 380. But we're forced to order 400 because of our lot sizing rule. And that leaves us 20 left over at the end. Now, we're pretty much done with this problem. This is what we did in class, but there is an assignment. The homework assignment was to complete the next page, and the next page was assuming that these guys had children. So let's just annotate what happens here. We take these guys here, and they're going to go to any children that these items might have. So this guy here, B, he has a child named D. And this guy here, he has a child named E. So that's on the next page. So we flip the page over, and we'll go ahead and set this page up, and I'll do that. You should do it on your own. You should pause the video right here and do this on your own, then you can come back on and check and see if it's the same as mine. Okay, so you can see I've filled this out with respect to the parent that we just did on the previous page, and you can see, you know, I brought over from B2 here. These are the planned order releases, and then these are from C3 here, the planned order releases. I multiplied them, and I got these, multiplied them, got those, and in the end we've got one planned order release here for 200 and another planned order release here for 1,000. So hopefully this was pretty self-explanatory and you were able to follow it okay. Okay, thank you, bye.